Despite sharing the Pokemon trading card game name, Pocket and Live are two completely different games going after two completely different audiences. To give you the quickest answer possible to the title of this video, let's turn to a quote from the executive corporate officer at the Pokemon Company who said at a media roundtable in September, "We view Pokemon TCG Live as more of an extension of the physical TCG. It's something for players who want to learn the rules of the physical TCG. They are able to have this easy-to-use tool to test decks and learn the rules of the game and ultimately have that inform their physical TCG knowledge. Pocket is our idea to make the Pokemon TCG more approachable and accessible to a wider range of players. I think it's also different than a lot of other digital TCGs. In other TCGs, the focus is primarily on battle. And while we do have a really rich battle system that's going to be very fun to play, we equally focus on the card collection experience. So we wanted to kind of have both of those elements in a digital game application." The creative director at Creatures added, "We really focused on Pocket perhaps being a person's first experience and making it more friendly to new players. There are fewer complicated elements in it and fewer attacks on the cards compared to the physical TCG. As the Pokemon Company lays out, Live essentially takes the physical trading card game, complete with all the rules and cards you'd find inside physical packs, and makes it available digitally, allowing you to battle and test decks. Pocket, meanwhile, is a digital-only take on the Pokemon trading card game, complete with its own separate cards and packs, where collecting cards is a major focus with battling taking more of a backseat. And that's probably where I should start, the battles. I won't go in-depth about every single mini or difference between the two. Instead, I'll focus on the major changes, of which there are a few. As a quick note, whenever I have gameplay of both games on screen at once, Pocket will always be on the left with Live on the right. Okay, let's begin with the biggest change, the Energy Zone. In Live, which again uses the physical card game rules, you build 60 card decks complete with energy cards that you can attach once per turn, thus allowing your Pokemon to attack. You can include any type of energy in your deck and any amount of that energy. In Pocket, you build 20 card decks. Yes, decks in Pocket are a third of the size because, as I've mentioned, they are completely different games. Instead of attaching energy cards, here a single energy is generated in the energy zone every single turn, except on turn 1 for the player going first. You can include up to 3 different types of energy with your deck, but the energy is randomly generated each turn in the energy zone, so it's a much better idea to stick with a single energy. Energy generated in the energy zone disappears at the end of your turn if it's not used, so you have to make sure you're attaching every single turn. Another major change has to do with prize cards. In Live, after drawing your opening hand, you take the top 6 cards of your deck and place them into your prize cards, which you then claim by knocking out your opponent's Pokemon. EX and V Pokemon are worth 2 prize cards, while everyone else is worth 1 prize card, and the first to take all 6 wins the duel. In Pocket, prize cards are gone. Instead, it's the first to 3 prize points. EX Pokemon are worth 2 prize points, and non-EX Pokemon are worth 1 prize point, but things like V Pokemon don't exist. So unlike Live, where you can be completely screwed over by prizing the best cards in your deck, with Pocket, if you put a card in your deck, you'll always have a chance of drawing it. There's a lot of other differences that I'll mention rapid fire right now. In Pocket, you can only have a maximum of 2 cards with the same name in your deck versus 4 in Live. Starting hands in Pocket are 5 cards versus 7 in Live. Pocket only allows for 3 bench Pokemon instead of 5. In Pocket, you can't lose by decking out like you can in Live. Running out of cards in your deck in Pocket just means you don't draw a card at the start of your turn. There's a limit of 50 turns in Pocket before the game ends in a draw, whereas Live has no such restriction. Both have turn clocks and game clocks, with each player in Pocket having 20 minutes and each player in Live having 25 minutes. Weakness in Pocket is a simple plus 20 damage, while in Live it's doubled. Resistance in Pocket doesn't exist, while in Live it's minus 30. And you can play a supporter turn 1 going first in Pocket, while you can't in Live. Those are the most important differences when it comes to battles between Pocket and Live. Basically, even if you've played 10,000 games in Live, you'll still have to relearn how to beat off other people in Pocket. Another aspect is how the power of cards is wildly different. Take Charizard EX in Pocket versus Charizard EX in Live. The one on the left from Pocket has 180 hit points and deals 200 damage, the strongest attack in the game, able to one-hit KO everybody. The one on the right from Live has 330 hit points and deals up to 330 damage, which isn't the strongest attack in the game. In fact, depending on the situation, you can do 1,000 or more damage in Live, though 330 is typically enough to one-shot everybody. The same can be said for Professor's Research. In Live, you discard your entire hand, then draw 7 cards. In Pocket, you simply draw 2 cards. If you had to soft boil the two games down, Pocket is a streamlined, much simpler version of the main trading card game, while Live is the main trading card game. Really hammering home the Pokemon Company's decision to make Pocket less complicated. If you look at the non-EX Pokemon, all of them feature just a single attack and very few have abilities. Whereas in Live, non-EX Pokemon can have 2 attacks and a good number of them have abilities. As for multi-prize Pokemon, they're much simpler in Pocket, though they can have either 1 or 2 attacks. To quickly finish up with battles, item cards in Pocket don't allow any sort of specific deck search. In order to keep the battles moving along like the All-American Rejects, a card like Pokeball grabs a random basic Pokemon from your deck. In Live, you can use Ultra Ball to search your deck for whatever Pokemon you want, so long as Live doesn't break and actually allows you to take the Pokemon you want. As for trainers, Live has supporters, items, tools, and stadiums. While Pocket doesn't have tools or stadiums at launch, there is a listing for tools in the filters, so expect them down the road. Status conditions, meanwhile, are the exact same between both games. The only difference is that flipping Tails on Confusion in Pocket sees your attack failing and the turn ending, while in Live, flipping Tails sees your attack failing and the confused Pokemon punching itself in the face for 30 damage. And finally, mulligans don't exist in Pocket, so even if you have 1 basic Pokemon in your deck, you're guaranteed to start it. While in Live, you can have a 20-card starting hand if your opponent mulligans a bunch. Again, these are 2 extremely different games and should never be mentioned in the same sentence. Unless that sentence is, I'm subscribing to Trust Your Pilot on YouTube because he covers Pokemon TCG Pocket and Pokemon TCG Live. Next up, let me briefly talk about microtransactions. In TCG Pocket, you can spend up to a maximum of $150 a day opening packs with Pokégold, the in-game currency. The game is designed to squeeze you dry like a Miltank's udder unless you want to be drip-fed from the teat known as the Pokemon Company by only opening your 2 free packs a day. In TCG Live, there's no way to spend money in the app, and unfortunately it shows. But when you open a physical pack of Pokemon cards in real life, you may have noticed that there's a code card inside. There's currently no way to redeem codes in Pocket, so those codes can only be used in Live, giving you a pack to open. Though be aware that the pack will only have 5 or 6 cards in it depending on the generation, and the cards will be randomized. They won't be the exact cards you pulled in that physical pack. In all, it costs roughly $1.20 to open a single pack in Pocket, where Live will see you spending 5 to 20 cents on a code from a reseller depending on the set. You might be wondering why the economics of both games are so wildly different. Well, that leads me to the next difference, the developers. Pokemon TCG Pocket is developed by the Pokemon Company, Creatures, the creators of the Pokemon TCG, and DNA, the developers of Pokemon Masters EX. While Pocket is the product of a threesome, Live is handled solely by the Pokemon Company International, a subsidiary of the Pokemon Company. We in the Live community joke that TPCI is a small indie company when talking about all the issues it's had, but it's kinda true. Compared to the amount of people responsible for Pocket, Live is like a Joltik compared to their Wailord. Unfortunately, because Live doesn't make money, there's no incentive to improve the experience. And because it doesn't make money, there's no room to increase the team size. That's why, nearly 3 years later, we still have game-breaking glitches that have been around since day one. And new sets are more likely than not to introduce brand new game-breaking issues. But with Pocket, they have to listen to feedback and give us an app worth booting up every day. The Pokemon Company wants Pocket to make $100 million a year like Marvel Snap. And you can't do that by putting out a subpar product nobody wants to use long term. The difference in developers also helps explain why Pocket was the focal point of its own Pokemon Presents earlier this year, while Live has never even been mentioned in a Pokemon Presents despite being announced more than 3 years ago. There is one advantage to Pokemon TCG Live's lack of resources: getting started is so much easier. While in Pocket you only get 1 free kinda bad starter deck plus an EX Pokemon, in Live, you get 9 free decks for simply opening the game, some of them fairly close to being competitive, plus 2 more free decks on the Battle Pass. Getting free access to somewhat powerful decks is one of the great things about Live and makes it a little more palatable when the issues strike. Similarly, getting specific cards in Live is much easier than Pocket. While it'd take far too long to explain the intricate differences between Pocket's and Live's economies, basically, if you wanted to craft a Pokemon EX in Pocket, it costs 500 pack points, which would require you to open 100 packs. If you wanted to craft a Pokemon EX in Live, it costs 600 credits, which can be done with as little as 1 pack. Though keep in mind, it's not an applins to applins comparison. Essentially, getting a card you want in Live can be done almost right away, while in Pocket it's going to take either a long time or a lot of money. While Live's predecessor, Pokemon Trading Card Game Online, featured trading, Live does not. It was replaced by that crafting system, which is an improvement in many ways because the trade market in Online was all over the place. So Live will never have trading, but Pocket will, coming in an update after it launches globally on October 30th. However, we have no idea when it's actually coming or how exactly it will work, just that it'll indeed be happening. Speaking of cards, when does each game get new sets? With Pocket, they haven't laid out their release schedule. Based on some of the answers given during the media event in September, it seems like they'll monitor players' collection levels and add new sets when a lot of people are close to finishing the previous one. Or more likely when the daily active user count begins to drop and they want money. With TCG Live, new sets launch simultaneously with physical sets. For example, Surging Sparks hits store shelves on Friday, November 8th, and Live will get it the day before on Thursday, November 7th. And when a new set launches in Live, that's when the new Battle Pass begins. There's 2 levels, Basic and Premium, with both offering a new free deck at Tier 0. The Basic Pass is free to everyone, while you can easily gain access to the Premium Pass by spending 600 crystals, which are earned free in 10 days by completing daily missions. Pocket, meanwhile, wants you to spend $10 every month to subscribe to their Premium Pass, which gives you 1 extra pack per day, plus access to some premium missions. But what can you actually do in these games? Pocket's homepage is all about getting you to open packs, which is the main thing they want you to do. But you can also display those cards and show them off to other people in community showcases. Then there's Wonder Pick to try to randomly get a card another player opened from a pack. And of course, battling. Here you can do a private match against a friend, battle a random person in PvP matchmaking, or try to beat off the computer in solo battles. There's no ranked mode in Pocket as of now, though the developers hinted that we might get one in the future. As for Live, there's standard ranked, standard casual, and expanded casual when it comes to battling. Though Live's version of expanded doesn't include black and white or X and Y cards, instead only allowing for Sun and Moon, Sword and Shield, and Scarlet and Violet. You also have the option of battling friends, but only in the standard format. And there's no single player content in Live unless you count testing a deck against the AI who will never attack and tries desperately to lose the game via deck out as soon as possible. Of course, I couldn't do a comparison between Pocket and Live without showing the pack opening experience. As a reminder, Pocket gives you access to 2 free packs every day. While in Live, you can earn packs from the Battle Pass, as well as additional packs from code cards that come inside physical packs. I've literally given away thousands of codes over the last few years, and it definitely helps new players boost their collections. But the pack opening experience in Live leaves much to be desired. I personally always hit the collect all button to get it over with as quickly as possible, which is a great feature when you're opening 10 packs at once and just want the summary. For Pocket, you can't skip the pack opening, you can only make it go faster. Typically, I'll at least preview the pack by turning the cards to see if there's a hit, and if there's not, I'll just speed through it like a Deoxys. One key difference between Pocket and Live is that packs in Pocket don't have guaranteed rares. You could open 10 packs in Pocket and only end up with commons and uncommons. Whereas in Live, you're always guaranteed a rare, plus at least a reverse holo in the reverse holo slot. And finally, where can you play them? Pocket is a mobile-only game that will be available for iPhones and iPads running iOS 13 or later, and Android devices that support the specs you see on screen right now. You also have the option of changing the display quality and frame rate if Pocket isn't running well, but I have a cheap Android and it runs perfectly. For PC and Mac users, you might be able to use an emulator like BlueStacks, but the Pokemon Company may end up restricting access. Looking at TCG Live, it's available natively for PC, Mac, iOS, and Android. At least for me, my PC squeals like a pig night when I boot up Live, but otherwise it runs okay. And since day one, users have reported major issues with battery drain and overheating on their phones, but that has lessened a little bit over the years. Though with winter approaching, Live is the perfect hand warmer. It's probably a little weird that I waited this long to include PC footage of TCG Live, but there wasn't really a natural point to include it elsewhere. Anyways, to quickly answer the question in the title of the video, the difference between Pocket and Live is that they're completely different. One is a digital-only game centered around collecting cards with battling also there, while Live takes the physical card game and translates it to a digital game. Because I didn't want this video to be 2 hours long, I definitely condensed it, leaving out things like the creepy avatars in Live that allow you to send unsettling emotes, whereas Pocket doesn't allow you to directly interact with your opponent, opting for sending a thanks at the end of a battle instead. So if you have any questions about Pocket or Live, ask away in the comments. Otherwise, check out my starter guides for both games in the description so you can get off to the best start in each.